Ever since I was a little kid, I've loved Tycoon games. When I was like 8, I got a copy of Zoo Tycoon and some roller coaster games, and from then on, I've loved the genre. Over the years, I've played the hell out of titles such as Game Dev Story on iOS, Mad Game Tycoon, and most recently Software Inc., which was actually my 4th review on this channel. I even tried to make my own Tycoon game like 4 years ago with just basic Java. I've dug up the code for the 2 different prototypes that I spent a few weeks on before other projects got in the way. But the gist was, you would start a computer company in the 80s, build parts and computers as time ticked by, and sell either the parts or finished computers while facing off against other companies like Boney. So when I was browsing Steam last month and saw Computer Tycoon, I was instantly interested. I will admit, I asked the dev for a key and he very generously gave me one, meaning this is the first review where I've gotten the game for free. I've asked for or been offered keys before, but never ultimately decided to accept them until now. Don't worry, at the end of this review I'll try to restore my integrity as a random YouTube video essay guy, but for now, onto the game. So, as the dev puts it, Computer Tycoon is a business management grand strategy hybrid, where instead of painting the world map your colour through war or marriage like in a Paradox game, you instead try to build the best computers to win over each country. The game has been in early access since 2017, and honestly the time and dedication shows. I know that making a game this detailed takes a lot of time, so I'm going to try and do it justice, while also leaving some feedback. Since this game is in alpha at the moment, the chances that it'll look different or have replaced entire systems is pretty high, so forgive me if things change. I normally don't talk about early access things until their 1.0 release, but I decided to make an exception for this one since I want to help support its future development. So with any new company, you get to roll random stats for your founder and then roll through a bunch of possible co-founders, each with preset stats and very cool artwork. Once you've set that up and the campaign properly starts, you'll need to set up a factory, probably a research facility, and decide which country you'll sell your PCs in first. Now Computer Tycoon takes a pretty broad approach to factories. You won't be designing the assembly lines or placing units or anything like in Software Inc. or Factorio. Instead, you can build or upgrade different types of buildings like factories, research centres, or logistics hubs. The challenge instead comes from balancing when to upgrade buildings, as well as richer countries being more expensive to manufacture in, while poorer countries may struggle with research, meaning you'll need multiple locations around the world. The game has a decent tutorial to explain these concepts, so I won't go into it heavy here. Though with that said, my first hour or so of runs had my company go bankrupt after my first PC because I didn't understand how to read the menus and didn't know how to balance research with price setting, as well as learning how to look at what my competitors were doing. I'll come back to this along with some other feedback in a while, but for now I want to talk about computer building itself. Computer building in this game is ridiculously well done. Basically, to make a computer there are certain parts that you have to include, like memory, a CPU and a motherboard. While other things like a GPU or a screen are optional, though they could be the advantage over your competitors, especially early on. Each part goes through variations throughout the game with lots of unique artwork to roughly represent the progression of technology from the 80s all the way to the future. Obviously, you could try and put the best computer on the market with absolutely groundbreaking features, though the cost of that might stop anyone from actually being able to buy the thing. So instead, you want to make a computer that will sell to as many people at the highest price, without needing to invest in big factories early on. In the current version, you'll be going up against 8 AI-controlled companies, and the AI is actually quite well made. They're good at finding their own niche in the market, and you do see them figure out ways to turn around a few bad releases. When I started this game though, my first few companies failed even on the easiest setting, just because I couldn't really figure out some of the mechanics. So this game does have a bit of a complicated UI, which isn't anything shocking for the grand strategy genre. But a lot of the current negative reviews for the game really focus in on the UI and the tutorial, usually saying it stopped them from playing the game at all. The dev has been really good about listening to this feedback and has been trying to improve the UI and the tutorial in particular. And I don't want to make it sound like this is a raw 4X or something, because it only took me around an hour before I knew enough to start a decent run. And while I think that this game has a bit of a steep early learning curve, it definitely levels out as you move through the difficulties. And speaking of the difficulties, I think this is actually one of the strongest aspects of the game. I normally avoid the easier difficulty in games, but in Computer Tycoon I really felt like there's a nice progression between each level. Playing on easy allowed me to ignore or misunderstand certain mechanics so I could focus on the core features, And then when I started to think that maybe the game had lost its challenge, I was able to bump up to the next level and start seeing the game in a whole new light. Early drafts of the script were still positive on the game, but it was when I started playing on hard and pro that I realised just how much I liked this game. Before I go into some feedback, I wanted to again highlight the really nice artwork in the office screens. It's really lovingly done, and the same is true for the style of the different managers, and I just really like it. On top of that, the announcer's voice acting is great.
Your research queue is empty.
Though honestly, I just love putting videos on another screen and playing this game while I listen to them in the background. There are lots of other things I love about this game, like the amount of flavor text scattered all around the place, but despite saying how much I like the game, there are a few things I'd like to see added or changed. A lot of the stuff is in the roadmap, so the dev is already thinking of adding them, but I thought I should mention them anyway. So one of the biggest things I want added is a more dynamic game world. Currently, if you play on the historical mode, you'll see things like the collapse of the USSR, which adds both new countries to the world map, as well as allowing you to sell to previously closed economies. But currently, no new companies ever get formed, and countries don't have recessions or move from rich to filthy rich or anything like that. I think a small amount of randomness would go a long way to adding even more replayability to this game, especially if it was something you could set at the start of a new campaign. Next up, I think it would be cool to see more interaction with other companies. At the time of writing, this is going to be the next major update, and the dev has said it'll be kind of like talking to other leaders in the Civilization games. But I'd love to see the ability to trade research, invest in stocks, or maybe even sell stocks in your own company as a way to raise money. It'd be cool to even set up manufacturing deals, so you could be like Intel, selling CPUs to every company in the world. And I know this is a tiny gripe for a grand strategy game, a genre known for some really functional at best maps, but I would like to see the style choice from the office and managers carried over to the world map, and maybe even try to unify the different styles a bit. I had to include this here because it is what I think, though personally I think the amount of dev time something like that would take is probably better spent in some of the other areas I mentioned already. Honestly, a lot of what I want to see is in the roadmap. So if you're watching this video even a year after release, who knows where this game will be. I'll keep an eye on it, and I may return if it's gotten enough changes to leave this video horrifically out of date. But I think even where it is today, it's a really solid and fun game. I put in around 30 hours making this review, and most of that time was just enjoying the game after the script was finished and footage was ready, so I think it's an easy recommendation if you like this kind of game. There's definitely games that are more in depth and games that are more streamlined, but it's crazy to me that this game is literally what I wanted to make 4 years ago, and I didn't know that it already existed. As always, single person dev teams have a place in my heart, and I think if you ever want to buy a game at full price, these are the folks you should support. And you might be thinking, after getting the game for free, isn't it a bit hypocritical that I say that? And you'd be right. So I bought a copy of the game at full price, and I'll drop it on screen now. But if you're the person that takes this key and you end up liking the game, I'd really appreciate it if you passed on the favour, either to a friend or even just dropping it in the comments for some other viewer. As always, more videos to come soon, and I'm really sorry, but I think We Won't Escape Business Sims, as an all-time favourite game of mine, just announced a PC port. Until next time though, thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, comment if you want to. The algorithm loves it, but I also love reading what everyone thinks. Until next video though, thanks.